Boom. Face reveal. Done.
All right.
That's not the point of the video. Point of the video here is this is the introduction to the Booming Basketball channel. Hopefully, or I assume most of you are coming from my Instagram page, which is where I have started everything. But I decided that I wanted to get into video creating and making YouTube videos. So that's exactly what I'm doing here today. And what we're starting with on this channel is going to be our reaction to the Eastern and Western Conference All-Star starters. And then I'm going to be giving my pick here today for the reserves. I don't know what day that they're going to be announced, but that is so far what we have on the agenda for today. Obviously, starting off with the East, we have Luka, Steph, Zion, LeBron, and Jokic. I think that pretty much all of them were deserved other than maybe Zion. You could have thrown Sabonis in there probably. I don't really disagree with Zion being on it. I mean, he has missed like 20 games or whatever so far, and yeah, that's a problem. But if Steph is going to be in it and Kyrie's going to be in it, I don't really think that's that big of a deal. Zion statistically is probably better than any other option that they could have put in for the West right now. But yeah, then you have the East: Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and then obviously Kevin Durant, who is not the captain, actually just got beat out by Giannis during, I think, the last voting. Maybe he was leading for more than that. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. They're both starters. They're both in the All-Star game. And that's kind of the point with Joel Embiid. Even though he was snubbed, I think all of us expected one of them to get snubbed, either him or Tatum. So it's not really all that surprising, even though Twitter decided like all hell broke loose. I don't know what people were expecting. Obviously, it wasn't possible for Durant and Giannis, Jason Tatum, and Embiid to all start. There's not enough room for the forwards, and Embiid's going to have an all-star appearance at the end of the day regardless. So I don't really see it as that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, maybe Sixers fans especially, a little annoyed, but like it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. An all-star selection is an all-star selection. No one is going to look at the end of their careers and see how many games they started in the all-star game. It's just not something people care about. Maybe Kyrie Irving is the one player that is questionable. You could have put Jaylen Brown over him. He is on the one-seeded team.
5 of 5 from the line. To tie. Wow, he missed the...
But at the same time, Kyrie is still putting up great numbers and trying to carry the Nets single-handedly right now without KD, which Jaylen Brown hasn't had to do at all really this season. Tatum's missed a few games, but it's been pretty much nothing. KD's obviously been out quite some time now. So yeah, I don't really see a problem with Kyrie starting. I have really no problems with the East. The West, I mean, again, you could change maybe Zion. I don't think it's that big of a deal because really Zion's stats are too good for him to not be in the game. So whether he's starting or not starting, again, like the injuries, Steph missed whatever it was. He's only played 31 games. Zion's played like 29 at this point. So, and when Zion went down, the Pelicans were the 2 seed. So it's just a little thing that maybe some people are annoyed about. I'm a big Zion fan, and I can't wait to see him in the game, hopefully, if he's healthy by then. So I don't really have a problem with it. But I guess if people want to get mad over that, that's what people on Twitter like to do. So, yeah, you can go do that. Speaking of Twitter, we have that pulled up. I'm just going to take some look at the replies on Twitter. Some of the genius people that are always on this platform and probably the smartest human beings. Some really thought-provoking questions and points being brought up that you won't get the same kind of content anywhere else on any form of social media. So Twitter really has the most brain power probably out of any social media platform. So let's take a look there and see what people are saying. Anthony Edwards was robbed. See, that's an interesting one. Anthony Edwards, so you're going to put Anthony Edwards over Steph Curry or Luka. I'm pretty sure Edwards was considered as a guard. Again, I did not vote for Anthony Edwards as an NBA All-Star starter, so I really don't know what he was listed as on the ballots because I know they have a bunch of positions messed up. Like DeRozan's still listed as a shooting guard, even though he hasn't played shooting guard in probably like 3 or 4 years now. So it's not the only thing they've messed up. I don't know what position he was listed at. I guess maybe him over Zion if he was listed as a forward, but even then, probably not. Not the Thunder, but the Timberwolves have been a little underwhelming this season. Not to say it's his fault. I made a post about whose fault I kind of think it is on the Instagram. If you want to go check that out, it's probably like the 5th or 6th most recent post I have. So if you want to go look at that about Baguette Biyombo, be my guest because I put a bunch of things in there. On to the point, though, about Edwards making the All-Star game. I don't think Edwards is more deserving out of any of the guys, especially the guards, because even if Steph didn't make it due to games missed, I think that Shea deserves it way more before I'm going to put Anthony Edwards in the All-Star game. So he might get a shout off the reserves. We'll get into that soon, but I don't think that Anthony Edwards was really robbed of a All-Star spot. Yes, Tatum starting robs Boston fans from their joy of complaining about every team being against them. That's a nice point. I'm not a huge fan of Celtics fans there. Sorry if you're a Celtics fan. Jaylen Brown got screwed. I guess you can argue that he did.
Wow, he missed them both.
I don't think he really got screwed because he's missed some time, but it's not as much as like Zion has, albeit just 7 games less. But yeah, again, no Embiid is disgusting. What else did you think was going to happen if Tatum got robbed? People would say the same thing about Tatum. Austin Reeves, yeah, very much deserving, right? Yeah. 1,301 views on this tweet and a solid 3 likes. Not going to be one of those today because that's quite a terrible point. Now we're going to be getting on to what you've all been waiting for so very patiently, and it's going to be my own picks for the All-Star reserves. We're going to be starting with the East, and my first player that I have is the guy that we just talked about being a potential starter in the East over Kyrie Irving, and it's going to be Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is the number 1 seed, or he's on the number 1 seeded team in the East, obviously, the second best player on the team alongside Jason Tatum, who's having an MVP caliber season. Brown's averaging 27 points a game on solid efficiency. He scores from all 3 levels. He's a really good defender. And he's proven time and time again that he's one of the best two-way players in the NBA. Led his team, obviously, alongside Jason Tatum to the finals last year. The Celtics have been super good again this year. And, yeah, probably a lock for the All-Star reserves as much as anyone could be because the Celtics are the number 1 seed like we just talked about. And yeah, he's the second best player on the team, bar none. Just to clarify, in case you didn't know, the All-Star reserves are made up of 2 guards, 3 forwards, and then they have 2 other players of anything. It doesn't matter their position. There's 2 wild card players. So we're starting with the guards. The second guard is Tyrese Halliburton, only guy in the NBA other than James Harden right now, averaging 20 and 10. Trae Young's almost right there. He's averaging just under 10 assists, but he's also shooting the ball about as well as a high schooler playing in the NBA. So he's not on this list, in case you're wondering. Trae Young did not make the cut so far. Don't think that the Hawks are good enough right now, and his efficiency is it's almost laughable. It's disgusting. His percentages make me want to throw up in my mouth and eat it again.
What's wrong with you?
But this is not about Trae Young. We're talking about Tyrese Halliburton. And even though the Pacers have slipped a little bit, they're the 9th seed right now, started off the season as the 6/7th seed for a while. They were vying for it with the Knicks. But the Hawks have been a little better as of late, alongside with the Heat, who have been much better. They've gone up to take the 6th seed from the Knicks and the Pacers have fallen down all the way to 9th, even though they are just a few games back. However, I don't think that this Pacers team is really good at all other than when they have Tyrese Halliburton. And Tyrese Halliburton getting hurt the other week against the Knicks has shown how valuable he is to this young team because the Pacers have not been good since he's been injured. And he's really the heart and soul of their offense because he creates all the plays for them. He's their best scorer. He shoots the ball at an incredibly efficient rate, over 40% from 3 and solid percentage from the field, as well as being a good free throw shooter. Has no real flaws in his offensive game despite his disgusting jump shot. But hey, if it works, there's no point in fixing it. Just ask Shawn Marion. I also kind of forgot to mention Joel Embiid. He's pretty good at basketball. He's the guy that was starting that was probably the most locked to be on the bench or as a reserve. I don't really think I have to talk about Joel Embiid very much. He's easily going to be a reserve. He's averaging 33 points a game. So yeah, Joel Embiid will also be one of the forwards for the East. Looking at the other forward positions who are probably a little less obvious than Joel Embiid, I have Spicy P himself, Mr. Pascal Siakam. Even though the Raptors haven't been up to par probably this season, Pascal's still been really, really good, having the best season of his career. Averaging 25 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists is pretty damn good to me, especially when Pascal wasn't really a playmaker as much before this season. He's really stepped up into that role of handling the ball more and kind of initiating the offense for the Raptors when they've struggled to get going. So shout out to Spicy P for expanding his bag, because that man used to just do spin moves constantly. And so did the man that I'm talking about next at the other forward position, Julius Randle, the human Beyblade, as some used to refer to him. And I don't think that can be said at all anymore. And I want Julius Randle to have his respect, because Julius Randle has been one of the best forwards in all of basketball this season. And as much as people love to hate on him in the Knicks, he's been damn good. And tonight, when I'm recording this, he just had 37 points on national television, and the Knicks beat the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics. So I don't really know what else there is left for Julius Randle to do for his All-Star case. He's averaging almost 25 and 11 at this point. So if that's not All-Star numbers, I really don't know what is. Now we're going on to the two players that does not matter the position or whatever they play. They could be left water boy, and they could still be eligible for this. It's the wild card position. And for me, I have a big and a guard. So the first one for me is going to be Bam Adebayo. Spoiler alert, the only player I have from the Heat in this list, because Jimmy Butler's missed a little bit of time. And so far this season, I think that Bam Adebayo's been their most important player. Probably a top 5 candidate so far for Defensive Player of the Year, averaging a career high in points, averaging 21 and 10 rebounds, really having the strongest campaign of his career so far. So for Bam Adebayo, I think he deserves that All-Star selection just a little bit more than Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler would be the number 1 guy I would have as my injured wild card or my injured reserved for any of the positions. If one guy were to go down, I think Jimmy is the first guy I would give that spot to. But to round off the Eastern All-Star reserves, I do have at my last spot, and I really don't want to be called biased for this, but I know I will be. I have
Jalen Brunson.
And the reason I have Jalen Brunson at this last spot is just because the Knicks would be nowhere without him. Julius Randle is that team's ceiling raiser, or he's their floor raiser. Jalen Brunson is the ceiling raiser for the Knicks. The Knicks only go as far as Jalen Brunson can take them, because at the end of games, he has been their closer. Despite not being their number 1 scorer points per game wise, he has been the guy to go to in the clutch. He has been one of the best players in the NBA since the New Year's, averaging 29 points up until his last contest, where he didn't have as good of a game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Before that, though, averaging 29.3 points a game through January. So Jalen Brunson, I think for me, just has to be an all-star this year. He's the first Knicks point guard to be doing this really since ever. I don't think the Knicks have ever had a point guard with this level of scoring ability other than maybe Stephon Marbury, and he impacted winning about as much as I do by sitting on the sideline rooting for the team.
Take some Vaseline and swallow it.
Again, I didn't put guys in here like Trae Young or DeMar DeRozan, mainly just because they're offensive-only players and their teams aren't very good right now. So, again, maybe wild cards, or not wild cards, but the injury reserve. If a bunch of players get hurt, maybe they're like second and third on the list after Jimmy, but I don't feel bad about not putting them on the list necessarily, because they haven't impacted winning in the way that the other players I put on this list have. Now we go to the Western Conference, which used to seem to be the powerhouse conference. And really, if you look at the All-Stars this year, I think the East honestly may have a better pool, at least with the starters, because in the West, I think it was pretty obvious who the starters were going to be, whereas in the East, you had a guy like Joel Embiid who was forced out of the starting lineup just because of how many talented forwards there are. But I digress. We are doing the Western Conference All-Star reserves. And the first guy that I'm going to be starting out with is going to be Damian Lillard at the point guard position. Dame is really the only reason why the Blazers aren't maybe the worst team in the West this year. They have the worst bench in all of basketball. Again, I made a post about them. My most successful post actually to date was about them. Rip City is ripping ass, it was called. Damian Lillard has done an absolute carry job, had a 60-point outing the other night against the Jazz, and has been everything that the Blazers wanted him to be last year before he got injured. So the old Damian Lillard is back, and I think this year he's got to be an all-star again, especially because of where the Blazers would be without him. The next guard I have for the Western Conference All-Star reserves, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai Gilgeous has been one of the best point guards in all of basketball this year, absolutely emerging from being a very good player last year to superstar status really even this year. 30 points per game is nothing to laugh at, despite his team not being good and not having too many people to share the ball with or touches. 30 points per game is 30 points per game, and he's doing it on really good efficiency, which is, I think, the hallmark of significance for points per game, because you could be Jerry Stackhouse and be shooting 41% from the field and have no one on your team and be jacking shots and average high points per game. You look at Trae Young, he does it right now. So really, I think that his efficiency has just been ridiculous, and Shea's going to be one of the best players in the league for a while. So OKC is a lot to be excited about, and they should have their first All-Star this year since Paul George and Russell Westbrook. Before we get into the forwards, I'm going to go just really quick to the wild card because I don't want you to think I forgot Ja Morant. I just really didn't care where to put either him or Dame in the wild card versus the guard position. So, yeah, Ja, again, obviously the Grizzlies right now, top 2 team in the Western Conference. He's got to be an all-star this year. Wild card or guard, they're probably not even going to say which is which when the all-star rosters release. But yeah, Ja and Dame are both going to make it. I don't think that's really arguable. Before we get into the last wild card spot, we're just going to bounce around here, go to the forwards again, because I think it's a little more interesting because the last pick I have for the wild card spot isn't going to be one that's universal or one that everyone agrees with necessarily. So I guess, yeah, save that for last. We'll do our 3 forwards first. And to kick that off with, I have Paul George. And even though Paul George has only played 30-plus games this season, he's still been absolutely great when playing and carrying the load until Kawhi's gotten back. And now Kawhi is back, and the Clippers look pretty freaking good right now. I think that Paul George has done a great job keeping this team afloat, even though he has definitely dealt with some injuries here and there this season. There's other guys that have missed time and are still in the All-Star game, hence Steph Curry, Zion Williamson. So yeah, again, Paul George got to be in the game this year. The next 2 players I have rounding off the forwards are going to be 2 European guys. 2 players that I'm a huge fan of. I like watching these players a lot. Really happy for their success this season, even though one of them has been a previous All-Star. So we're going to start with the one who hasn't been, and that's Lauri Markkanen. I think most people are on the same page with me about him being an All-Star this season, averaging 25 points per game on 50% from the field and 40+% from 3. The dude has been super efficient, scoring from all 3 levels. Even though his defense still isn't great by any means, he's taken a Utah team that had 0 expectations heading into this season, and right now they're in the play-in because of Lauri Markkanen mainly. He's been an absolute stud this year and has emerged as a potential real number 1 option for at least a rebuilding team. So I think that this year, obviously, he's going to make the game. If he doesn't, I'd be shocked. Now, the other European that I was talking about is Domantas Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis has been the second best playmaking center in the league this year. Obviously, he's not Nikola Jokic, but he's essentially Nikola Jokic light. And the Kings have been a really fun team this year. They have been one of the best offenses in all of basketball, and a lot of that is due to Domantas Sabonis. And the last wild card I have is his teammate De'Aaron Fox. So I think that there should be 2 Kings in the All-Star game this year, especially because the Kings are good for once, and we may not know how long it's going to last, especially with how bad their defense is. So this could all come crumbling down in the playoffs. But I think it's very important to celebrate the Sacramento Kings and the great Beam team. Well, they have something to celebrate because it hasn't been a very eventful history for the Sacramento Kings fans over the past 20 years.
1, 2, 3, like a beam!
Anyways, though, with that being said, that is all we have for today. Those are my All-Star picks for the 2023 NBA All-Star Game. Obviously, the starters already announced, so these were just the reserves. And I really hope you guys enjoyed my first video here on the Booming Basketball channel. Stay tuned for more content like this. Leave suggestions in the comments if there's something you would like to see me do or react to. And other than that, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.
You have a little bit of poop inside your testicles.